Hello, welcome back to the Arturia Jupiter-8 video series. Today we're dealing with key modes. It's this little section down here, and even though it's little, it's got teeth. This thing can really catch you out if you don't know it's there and if you're not aware of it at all times. What it basically does is it gives us the option to have basically two synthesizers in operation at the same time. You can have two different copies of the Jupiter. At least all of the controls that you see here, you can have two instances of them. We haven't seen this functionality yet. In whole mode, you don't see it. If I try to click this low button in panel mode, it doesn't do anything. I can't activate it because this option is set. And so we've only seen half of the synthesizer. If I click split, suddenly I can click that button. And can you see this red area over here? It says default. Once I clicked split, we've now got low and up. Each time I click one of these panel mode buttons, can you see some of the controls above changing? That's the two separate instances of the Jupiter-8 that we have access to simultaneously. We hear up on all keys above this split point here. You can pick this thing up and drag it wherever you want. It's currently set to C4. So every key that I press at C4 and above is going to make this sound. And every key that I play below C4, starting at this B3 here, is going to have a different sound. That sound is represented by these controls. So let's get the low panel with a really identifiable oscillating LFO. And the upper panel is still static. You see, I didn't press anything on the keyboard then. Both of those panels are live, but you can only see one of them, and this is where things can get confusing, because if you're not editing the right panel, then your ears and your eyes start telling you different stories and things get very confusing very quickly. So you've got to know what key mode you're in. If I'm looking at the upper panel and I want to get rid of that LFO, I can't. I'm not looking at the right half of the synth. This is the half of the synth I need to look at. And now can turn the LFO off. Each of those panels has two completely independent oscillators. So let's just stay with the low panel for the moment. So I'm going to play B3. Every time I play a note, I'm going to play B3 so that we're in the lower half. Let's so we're currently set to source mix VCO 1. Set that to a low triangle, 16-foot triangle. Oscillator 2, VCO 2, let's set to a 4-foot rectangle. Okay, mix those two together. That's two sounds. Now let's have a look at panel up, the upper panel. And we'll have an 8-foot saw. So the source mix will set to VCO 1. So now I'm going to press C4, which is the upper panel. Okay, there's my 8-foot saw. And for VCO 2, let's have noise. Mix those two together. Now there's nowhere on the keyboard where you're going to hear all four of those oscillators simultaneously. You either hear the lower panel or the upper panel. And as But just bear in mind that all four of those oscillators are set, you just can't hear them all at the same time. Now let's take that concept one step further and engage dual mode. This now means the split, see that split mark has disappeared. Now both panels operate across the entire keyboard and you have a genuine quad oscillator sound. So when I press any key on the synth, if I want to just make that noise a little bit louder, I'm looking at the upper panel. VCO2 is the source of the noise. If I want to make it really obvious, go to the lower panel, bring the entire panel down. This is the amplifier for the whole of the lower panel. And now we can only hear VCO2 of the upper panel. So bring the lower panel back in. And the upper panel, mix VCO1 back in. So how is it managing to do that? Well, it's generating 4 different sounds, which means it's using 2 different voices to make that sound. Because don't forget, there's no means by which you can have more than 2 oscillators in a single voice. That the voice is the thing that this is the absolute limit of the polyphony of the instrument. So every single one of these 32 voices can have a maximum of 2 oscillators, VCOs 1 and 2. So if we're playing a single note and we're hearing 4 different sounds spread across 2 instances of VCO1 and 2 instances of VCO2, we're having to use 2 voices to do it, which means the polyphony has halved. Now then, the polyphony situation with dual key mode is a little bit weird. See this polyphony 2 down here? I've just had to completely reconfigure the sound for this instrument in order to demonstrate this. What I've done is I've set up a single sine wave in dual mode. So even though we're still in dual mode and it's really quiet, so I'll just bring Insight in. We've got a sine wave sound here, but all of the other oscillators are actually firing. I've mixed the upper panel all the way to VCO2, it's generating a sine wave. I've muted the lower panel by turning the VCA all the way down. So the important thing to bear in mind is that all 4 oscillators are firing. You're only actually just hearing one of them. So when I press this key here, and we hear this very, very quiet sine wave, you might not even be able to hear it. That's a dual mode sine wave. I've got my polyphony down at 2, and so I still get to play 2 notes. Each one of those notes is using 2 voices, but the polyphony setting down here allows me to still play 2 independent notes. So that's using 4 voices, but it's with a polyphony of 2. It's really confusing. The way that I proved it was by going back to whole mode and setting up this weird thing back here. You can just about see it behind. I'll throw this out of the way actually. This is 19 separate notes, all generating sine waves. That's why I've made such a simple tone. And when I set it going, you can see that it plays any 2 notes simultaneously and throws the oldest note away. I can set the polyphony of the instrument to 32, and you'll hear, I think that's 17, 18, 19. It will go all the way up to 32. It's playing 19 simultaneous notes there. Now then, if I set this polyphony to 16 and enter dual mode, each one of those notes that I'm playing in this sequence is going to use 2 voices. So when we get to the 16th note, it's going to be able to play all 16 of them. When it plays the 17th note, it's going to throw the oldest one away, and everything is going to still seem to be absolutely fine. That's 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17th, oldest note gets thrown away, oldest note gets thrown away, oldest note gets thrown away. Everything is still working absolutely fine. But what we can't do is set the polyphony to 32 and expect this to work. This is not going to work. Because by playing 16 notes in dual mode, it's actually using all 32 voices. It's got nothing left. And so now when it attempts to play all of these 19 notes simultaneously, it's going to fail. What's that? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and it kind of just falls apart. It doesn't know what to do. It's not doing the whole throw the last note away thing, which it's supposed to do, and it's also not playing notes 17 and 18 and 19 because it can't. It doesn't have the polyphony to satisfy the request. Now this is a really fringe case, but I just wanted to prove definitively that even though you set this polyphony to maybe 8 and you're in dual mode, it's actually going to be using twice the number of voices, and there's going to come a point where if you keep going, if you play too many notes and you ask it to play more than twice as many notes as it needs, it basically can't do it. The synth can't do it. But the important takeaway is that every one of these dual mode voices is actually 2 voices. Every time you press a key, you're using 2 voices, but the polyphony value down here will still be okay. If I set this to 4, it's going to let me play 4 notes. That's using 8 voices. Well, only when I press the 5th key will it throw one of those notes away. So it's a little bit of a misnomer, this polyphony value down here, because it's not using 4 voices, it's using 8. In the next episode, we'll deal with sine mode, which is all about whether you have a polyphonic instrument or a monophonic instrument, unison modes, and the various means by which it manages the playing of all of those different keys. Hope to see you then. Thanks very much for watching.